I'm sitting here with Amy Haines with the Haines Law Firm. Amy has been practicing real estate law for 21 years and has been in the Mount Pleasant area. And today we're going to talk about title insurance, why you should have it, what it covers, and obviously at the end of the day it shows up on your closing statement and you have a lot of questions, but here you'll have the answers before you get to closing. So we're going to start off with why do you search title first?
We search title to protect our clients. There can be lots of problems in title. You can have, first of all, issues with ownership. You want to make sure that the owner that is selling the property on that contract is actually the owner. And I have had more than one time, we have sat down and we think a husband and wife are coming in, and the husband comes in and he says, "Oh no, she's dead." So it is strange to get all the way to a closing, but that has happened to us more than one time. And, they just thought they owned the property. They thought both names were on there and that it just transfers to them upon the wife's or the husband's death. That is not the case unless it reads a certain way. And in those cases, it did not. So we opened estates and we solved the problem. But you want to make sure that your client is going to get good title and not going to experience problems down the road that have to be rectified.
So you mentioned in the title, there's a couple ways people can take ownership, especially if they're two people. Mm-hmm. What are the two ways they can take ownership?
Well, there's actually multiple ways with more than one person. You can have just, if you and I own property and our names were just on there, we're 50-50 owners of the property, then we are what's called tenants in common. But you can also have a tenants in common with a right of survivorship. If you've got the right of survivorship on there, then it would read for and during their joint lives and upon the death of either of them, and then so you can see that it's on there. You can see that the title is not just held in individual names in that way. And that is a different type of title than a joint tenancy with a right of survivorship. Both of them would pass upon the death of one of the parties. The tenants in common with right of survivorship is a little bit more flexible in some ways, in that you can have unequal ownership. It doesn't have to be 50-50. You and I could own it 70-30. So you can have unequal ownership. It also, people think it may provide creditor protections. Whether it does or doesn't is not really tested in South Carolina. So I wouldn't necessarily rely on it for anything like that. It does also mean you can't sell the property or mortgage it without the other person. As a joint tenant with right of survivorship, where property passes between spouses or any party for that matter, you can sever that joint tenancy at any time. Tenancy in common with the right of survivorship is non-severable by one party. So It's a little bit different. I mean, there's lots of other ways to hold title. You can hold it in a trust, you can hold it in a company, you can have life estates, all kinds of fun stuff.
Okay. So if you borrow money, lenders will require title insurance.
Yes.
And then that's lender's coverage. And then there's owner's coverage. Kind of explain to people what the difference is and why it makes sense to consider getting owner's title insurance.
It's exactly what it sounds like. A lender's policy protects the lender. An owner's policy protects the owner. If you are a lender, you're going to require it to make sure that if some sort of title issue comes up down the road, they don't lose their mortgage interest. They overwhelmingly require it. There may be a few crazy lenders out there that are, risky and take those kinds of risks, and on small loans won't require it. But as an owner, usually property is your biggest investment. Your home is a large investment for most people, and I wouldn't want to take that risk personally. Anything I've ever owned, I want coverage for myself. That lender's policy provides zero coverage for the owner.
And I think you had mentioned to me before is that, let's just say you sell the property. Obviously the lender's coverage is gone. Mm-hmm. And if you didn't get owner's title insurance, then you don't have any protection going forward. So if there's a defect that was found people ago, then you don't have coverage. You don't have a way to come back and defend your interest.
That's exactly true. I mean, it does only protect the lender. So if you have an issue at sale and you don't have an owner's policy, that issue has to be solved one way or another, and it could be that you have to go through a lawsuit, or you have to pay someone money, or some other thing has to happen for you to even be able to sell your property.
So if you do run into a title issue after you buy the property and you have title insurance, what is the process?
Well, I will say, and I think we've had this conversation before about, what commonly happens. Most of the time people aren't getting paid out on it. It's not like, a fire burns down your house and you get paid out the cost to rebuild it. What happens with title insurance more often is that it keeps a transaction going. You know, if you have an issue, a lot of times where that arises is at a refinance or a sale of the property, and we determine there's a problem, and if you have an owner's policy on the property, then usually that transaction is able to continue. The title insurance company, the previous policy, will give an indemnity or has a standing indemnity agreement with the underwriter who is writing the new policy, and the transaction happens, and you may not even know that that happened. It may not even come up on your radar because the attorney's going to handle it and it's going to go on and the transaction happens and you had no idea that it was even a major issue. But yes, you can have a claim. Claims happen. Money gets paid out. I've seen it happen. I would say that's way less common than just title insurance allowing the transaction to continue. If you have an issue, then you make a claim with your title insurance company. If they investigate and they determine it's an issue, then yes, they may pay money to somebody. For instance, I've had, it was determined that an owner did not have good title to the property, and actually several of my clients had title to the property, and in order to get it transferred out, the title company who had that owner's policy on it, unfortunately that guy had an owner's policy, paid my clients money.
Now, one of the things you've helped my clients with is if they purchase a home and the current owner has owner's title insurance, sometimes you're able to do a reissue. What does it take to do a reissue?
So with a reissue, we just need a copy of the previous policy and we reissue off of that policy, and it can provide a significant discount for people. So yeah, that's a good benefit for it.
And that's pretty simple. All you have to do is get a copy. Now, I think we've talked about it where there's a time frame that they will reissue over.
It has to be within 10 years.
Within 10 years. Mm-hmm. And if you do that, and it's almost free money, if you will, because it saves them money and they don't have to do a whole lot to it.
Sure, it can be a fair amount of money too. I mean, it could be a few $100s, but yeah, I feel like you've saved people thousands of dollars before on stuff.
Right. Well, Amy, thank you so much for talking to us today about title insurance, because it's very confusing, and normally buyers don't really get involved in title insurance until the end of when the transaction is about to be complete, and by that you may not know if you should get owner's title insurance or not. But my advice, attorney's advice, is to get owner's title insurance because it does protect you, and it's a one-time fee that will be there for your protection. So, Amy, thank you so much.
Always a pleasure.
All right, take care.
All right, have a good one.